You're going to find yourself as the human being now living in multiple worlds. But first of all, that's the natural way of being. To the humans, it's a bit confusing. You're living in the world of yourself and now the master. And the master has many mansions. In other words, the master is not just singular. You're suddenly going to find yourself in the midst of a lot of yourself, but other aspects, other facets, and other dimensions of yourself. That is the master. That of past lives and future lives. That of the being who's still going through the experience of the wall of fire. That of yourself as the ascended master, even. All of these are going to start coming into consciousness in your everyday life. And it's beautiful, and it can be confusing. It can throw you off of your normal balance, and that's a good thing. What do? Instead of just going crazy in the mind, you take a deep breath and do a couple things. You realize it's actually not voices and it's not real noise. You're feeling a presence. And I ask you to feel into that very, very deeply, without abandon, without holding back, because it's all you. The mind will continue to try to assign a voice and a word and meaning to what is all the commotion in the house of the human. But that will subside fairly quickly. You're going to be living in the multiple worlds of you, both worlds, all worlds of you, and it's going to feel different. Most of the time, absolutely wonderful. Most of the time, freeing and liberating without all the worry and effort that you've had before. All of your stories from past lives, all of your stories that were generated from this lifetime, the experiences that sometimes continue to live on and on and on, they all come back home. No longer searching for answers, no longer in frustration. These stories, they continue out in the other realms, and not necessarily in the physical, and oftentimes they're just unanswered. They're frustrating and aggravating. They're aspects of yourself that are still out there playing through or fighting through experiences that you've had in the past. And suddenly this all comes back home in resolution, no longer having to go out and try to create an ending to the story or resolution to it. It becomes resolved. It becomes integrated. No longer fragments hanging out there in the other realms trying to find some sort of answers, but now the answer comes to you, and it's simply, I am. I exist. Suddenly what happens in your life in the terms of meta changes is that you begin to have an overall understanding. It's like knowing the past and knowing the future to a large degree. You don't have to go out and make big changes in your life. It just happens. And then you, as the human, experience them. You don't have to beg for change. You don't have to pray for change. It just begins happening. And you, as the human, experience what that's like. You experience what it's like to now be integrated with divine and human. You experience what it's like to go through a change in the order that you've never changed before. You start experiencing what it's like to no longer having to just rely on your mind to have mental thoughts. You have changes occurring in your life, synchronicity that's happening on a continual basis, not just once in a while. And pretty soon you say to yourself, I am in the flow now. I am back in the flow. You realize you don't have to worry about the future. You don't have to worry about things like paying the bills. You don't have to stress over what's going to happen next. What happens is this meta change occurs in your life. And it's almost like there's suddenly divine guidance. in your life, but not from some unknown God. It's the divine guidance from yourself. It's not going to tell you to turn left or right, but suddenly there's an unfolding of everything, of understandings, of little, even everyday things in your human life. Suddenly there's that ease and there's that flow. Suddenly you're living in this much more expanded reality, not just stuck in linear, but you realize that you are so incredibly expanded. Expanded meaning that you're aware of the past and the future. You're aware of so many more things than you ever were before. Suddenly you've opened that part of the mind that has always been there, that could access into the realms, and you don't have to work at it. You don't have to work at it, and that's one of the most important things about meta change. It is happening naturally as you're allowing the new light to flow in. Suddenly, it's no longer wondering and fearing what's going to happen. Suddenly, things just start happening and working, and there's a unity feeling, a oneness feeling to these things within yourself. Forget about the rest of the world for a minute, but within yourself. And suddenly things happen that you couldn't have possibly imagined or expected. And that's the time to pause for a moment, and in the words of Tobias, give thanks to yourself. You're the one that allowed these things. You're the one that went through the hard work and the allowing, and it's absolutely here now. It's magical. It is metaphysics now being expressed in your life on the planet. And these aren't things like suddenly getting rich. If you're still into that, you're in the wrong place. You need to go somewhere else or go way back and start at the beginning of all the Crimson Circle materials. It's not about making yourself younger or smarter, any of that. Those are incidental. Those are things, those are changes, but they're human identity changes. Those don't matter. You get to that point where you realize that doesn't matter. That was not what was going to bring me joy on this planet. The joy to be here is to be in my freedom, in my light, in my energy, here as an embodied master. And that is what is happening right now. You start to realize also that in this meta change that there really is no difference between you, the human, and the soul. I mean, kind of there is, because you, the human, still has to live down here. But you start to realize there's not this great separation anymore. The communication with the soul is always there. You no longer feel that there's that separation. Things are just happening. Things are just working out and flowing. You, as the human, are no longer in that place of having to worry about what's going to happen next. Part of you already knows, part of you already is in implicit trust that it just works out. Why? Because it's your light, it's your energy.